Greetings and welcome, Mile High Champions. This is your host, The Commish, and with me, as always, I have Big Nolski. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Prior to launching this podcast, Noel and I were just talking, and you're in for a treat because we are both loopy as shit right now. I was sending him a video on YouTube that I thought was really funny, and to send it to Noel, my brain being as sleep deprived and stupid as it is right now, I just Googled Noel as if that would help me at all. So you find some interesting things when you Google Noel, but you don't actually get to what you're trying to do, send him stuff. So at any rate, let's get started with everything. Let's get going with this podcast and have some fun. The first thing, as always, is the MVT award that goes to 5 Second Chug. Molly had a tremendous week. She was helped by the back of the MVP of the week, which is not too uncommon that the MVP makes the MVT of the week, and that was Cam Newton scoring 46.8 points. This helped her destroy Charlie 165 to 124. Cam Newton threw for 353 yards and 4 touchdowns. He did give up an interception and a fumble, but that's okay. He still got 46 points. That makes her the MVT and him the MVP. So that covered, let's go on to the shithead of the week, our weekly comical special run by Big Nolski about what's going on hilarious in the sports community. Who's the shithead of the week this week, Noel?
It is Rex Ryan, and I don't think this is going to be his first appearance on this year, assuming he lasts the entire season. Old Rexy, after a fairly terrible showing on Thursday last week, decided to shit can his offensive coordinator, who really wasn't the problem on that team. This is kind of classic Rex, where it's always the offense's fault. It's never his fault. And another fun part about it was he also fired Greg Roman, his offensive coordinator, after the team picture.
Why?
There's a lot of things going around. There's my speculation is that Rex knew his job was on the line. And Greg Roman was a hot, I'd say, head coaching candidate for the past couple of seasons, more so after the 49ers went to the Super Bowl. And, if the Bills ownership were to make a change, who are they going to fire? Are they going to, or who are they going to promote to head coach if they fire Rex Ryan? Well, most likely they'd promote Greg Roman, but because over the offseason, Sexy Rexy decided to hire his brother Rob, who's also an equally disastrous coach, to be basically the defensive coordinator. And assistant head coach. So this was nepotism and saving his own ass. Good job.
Nice, Sexy Rexy. That's the classic bullshit we'd expect from you. All right, let's go on to the review of week 2. We're going to start with the Littleton Spartans and the Parker Rams. This was a preview of the Engine Nerd Bowl, and it was pretty darn close. As you recall last week, Noel, we were too timid to plant a flag here because it was so up in the air. But as it turns out, the fantasy gods are still well in love with Brandon as they let him win 130 to 126. Tannehill came back. He had a good week at 36 points. Devonta Freeman is still kind of in the middle of the pack here, although it seems like he might lose some steam to Coleman here. The Rams had a pretty good week on the back of Kirk Cousins and Jarvis Landry, and the Ravens defense scoring 20 points, and the Ravens kicker scoring 15 points. The problem is whoever Larson picks is going to die. First he lost Keenan Allen in week 1. Then he lost Amir Abdul, and unfortunately he was on his bench. He didn't cost him anything, but he's on IR for the rest of the year. The worst part, though, is that Adrian Peterson is out. The $56 he spent in the draft is all for naught because he's going to be out until December. That's for our league, for all intents and purposes, pretty much the end of the season. I don't think he might be able to use him if he gets into the final rounds of the playoffs, but that sucks. He's basically lost his major firepower. So Larson has a steep uphill battle ahead of him. However, that doesn't mean he's out. If you recall back in 2007, Vanessa took Tom Brady as the first pick overall, and in the very first week, he blew out his ankle, was it, Noel?
It was his ACL.
Thank you. ACL. Was unable to continue, and she won. She not only won her division, she won the entire Mile High Champions League. So, Larson, hang in there. I know you've had a rough go with injuries, but I think you're going to be just fine. One thing I want to point out, I want to pat myself on the back here, because with fantasy, you're either right and you're like, okay, I expected that, or wrong, and people are like, you dumbass, why did you say that? I'm so happy that I got my call on AJ Green right, because last week I said AJ Green is one of those players who will get you 41 points or 4 points. Where I was wrong was that he actually got 5 points for Brandon this week. So that's one of those things that I think Brandon is going to be prone to big whipsaws in his production. Even though he's 2-0 to start the season, which is a great place to be, I think there's going to be some weeks where he's going to score less than 100 points, and it's going to seem like, what the hell? This isn't Brandon's team. This is just weird. So congratulations, Brandon. You are first in the Mountain Conference at 2-0. Larson, you're tied for second in the Mountain Conference at 1-1. So let's move on to the next game, Noel. Me versus Ben.
This one I thought was going to be close going into it, and despite the fact that Ben was still projected to get, I believe, 146 points going into Monday night, I was going to be surprised if he won, but he went ahead and pulled it out, and this was the second most close matchup of the week. Mike, you got yourself a good performance out of Derek Carr, decent, probably below what you wanted for Spencer Ware. Brandon Marshall looked like he might have been done for the season, but he came back and had a good game. Everything else was kind of okay. Jordy Nelson, he's starting to come back. You had a good kicker, and your defense looked good. You just kind of got, I would say, consistency'd by Ben, I would suppose. Where Ben just had slightly higher scores from everybody, sans Matthew Stafford, who I don't know what the fuck is wrong with him. Come on, Tennessee's defense sucks.
Yeah, bad.
And he's got the Chiefs' defense, and Houston's offense is no slouch. So 20.5 points out of them was good. Although there's worries going forward now that Cutler's hand is hurt, and now Alshon Jeffrey, can look forward to catching passes from Brian Hoyer, who can't throw the ball downfield to save his life. But big win, Ben, and congratulations to both of you on a close game.
Thank you. So that puts me tied with Larson in the Mountain Conference at second, and Ben tied third in the Atlantic Conference, which that's going to be a tough one. I think that's going to be the conference to win. Every team has a win in that, if not two. Whereas in the Pacific Conference, Vanessa has 1 win, and among them, they share 7 losses between the 4 teams. So it's kind of rough in the Pacific Conference. Let's go to the next game, which we'll see the Doom Givers taking on Vanessa's Buffaloes. Boy, Kenfield is having a rough start to the year. He just can't seem to get enough production out of his team. Carson Palmer had a great game, not unexpected. Eddie Lacy had a mediocre game, not unexpected. Odell Beckham Jr. sort of underperformed expectations here. He's overall through 2 weeks barely pushing a wide receiver 2. He's a 31 best wide receiver, which almost puts him out of a flex position, which sucks because he was $63 in the draft. You'd expect a lot more out of a guy you spent that much money on. He's getting bit by the old injury bug as well. Doug Baldwin, Jimmy Graham, Sammy Watkins, Antonio Gates, all injured, or all questionable, I should say. That's not going to bode too well for Kenfield. Vanessa, on the other hand, had a fairly good week. She actually had a lot of production across the board here. Bortles got 31 points. DeMarco Murray coming back. I was a little concerned that he was going to suck this year, and right now he's top 10 running back. 26 points the first, 29 the second week. Really good. The real downer for her was Antonio Brown, 8 points. That sucks. To your point last week, Noel, when we differed on opinions of Greg Olsen and Travis Kelce. I think I was making fun of her holding 2, but she did the right thing. She played a very good tight end. Obviously, Greg Olsen scored 28 points. That makes him the number 1 tight end through 2 weeks. So well done, Vanessa. The only thing I disagree with is starting a tight end in a flex position. Why she owns 3 is kind of beyond me right now. And you called that out as well. Why would you start a tight end in a flex position when you have so many other better players that are just sitting in the waiver wire right now? Even still, she pulled off a heck of a win and is 1-1 and first in the Pacific Conference. Kenfield, along with Charlie and Noel, I'm sorry to say, are all 0-2 to start the season and kind of falling below in the Pacific Conference. Now with our new 3-conference system, whoever gets first place is an automatic go to make the playoffs. Just like in the NFL with who made the NFC East last year? Was it the?
You like that?
That's right. I thought it was them. And then we got 9-7 season, which for a playoff team is pretty shitty to actually win the division. So,
and
you never know.
They didn't beat a team with a winning record all last season, so that 9-7 is pretty sad.
I love that stat. And I love the fact that every time I see Kirk Cousins, I'm just like, you like that? Any play he does, I say that in my head, or I say it out loud, even if no one is listening. So, good job, Vanny. Good win. And let's move on to Jake's protein shakes versus Josh's Summer Drew Brees.
Yes, this may have been, I think, we both probably called this as the game of the week because this is 2 strong teams, and it did not disappoint, although I'm sure Tyler's disappointed. But, even with the down week from Drew Brees, Josh had himself a good week. Carlos Hyde ran up against a tough defense, but he's showing that so far he's been still healthy, and that's good. Hopkins is a beast as always. I think he addressed it in the waiver wire, but I think the tight end position is something that Josh is trying to figure out. Forte, just insane. And then D'Angelo Williams, spelling for Le'Veon Bell, still just kicking ass. And on the other hand, I'm not too surprised. This kind of ties into the whole Antonio Brown thing that Ben Roethlisberger only got 26.8 points this week. They knew that Cincinnati's going to play him tough, and they were to come at him pretty fast. So there wasn't going to be a lot of big plays as far as Antonio Brown goes. They may have gotten deep stuff to some of the faster guys, but for the most part, they're just going to focus on getting the ball out of Roethlisberger's hands. Muscle hamster, another injury to him, and I've had him when he got hurt, and it's always frustrating. But I think if it wasn't for that, Tyler probably would have won this week, and he's got a good team. And for God's sakes, 29 points from your defense and 17 points from your kicker. You can't even really wish for that. That's just unthinkable.
That's kind of what they would score over 2 weeks, let alone one.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, a good week for both of them. Tyler, being in the more challenging Atlantic Conference, is tied for third with Ben at 1-1. And Josh is still dominating 2-0 ahead of the Atlantic Conference, which is, excuse me, the tougher one. It's the only one with 2-0 teams right now. He's scored through 2 weeks 367 points. That puts him well ahead of anybody else here in the Mile High Champions League. So well done, guys. Great week for you two. We move on to the MVT game and MVP. Molly crushed Charlie 165-124, again on the back of Cam Newton's 46-point game. Great game again by David Johnson. He's looking really good. I think he's going to be very elite. He's top 10. He's number 8 right now at running back. I think he will consistently do that. They used to, if you recall, Noel, run. I used to hate Arizona's platoon-style running back pike committee because you can never pick one and just be like, all right, this is their guy. Whereas, Adrian Peterson, until he got hurt, that was Minnesota's guy. Arizona would just run 3 or 4 guys, just like the Saints, and it just sucked. But that seems to be over. David Johnson seems to be their dude. He ran for only 45 yards, but he had a ton of catches, and that helped contribute to his 21 points. Another big game by the defense this week. She has the Panthers D. They got her 24 points. They're number 6 right now. She's doing really well with her defense. And then surprisingly, Latavius Murray had a good week, which I thought was bizarre considering that we had talked last week, Noel, about how he might be losing some of his touches to a more platoon-style system in Oakland. But, shit happens. So that's the fun of fantasy. He got 27 points and is helping Molly crush Charlie. Charlie sadly got bit by the injury bug this week with Thomas Rawls only putting up 4 points. This stat is kind of amazing. He rushed 7 times for, can you guess how many yards, Noel?
Well, I can because I also watched the game, but I also have it in front of me, so it's not really a guess anymore, but -7 yards.
That's right. -7. So that means his yards per carry is -7, or excuse me, -1. per carry. That sucks. I mean, a bad game is 2 yards per carry. A good game is north of 4. So -1 is almost. That's the first time I've actually seen that. So that's really bad. Julio Jones had a better week than he did last week. He got 106 yards and a touchdown, but he's questionable again. They're not sure if his calf is going to be up to speed for this Sunday. So unfortunately, Jones is one of those guys like Andre Johnson of yesteryear where they're phenomenal physical presence on the field. However, they're prone to injury. And so you never know if they're going to just blow up or literally blow up. So rough game this week for Charlie, but given how many points he scored, I'm not worried about him, and particularly because he's in the Pacific Conference. So I think that this is going to be just fine. Congratulations, Molly, on another solid win on MVT and MVP, and for giving Josh a run for his money through the first 2 weeks. And then finally, we've got Courtney at Noel's game. To his illusion, the closest game of the week. 1 point. I'm sorry, Noel.
It's okay. After Sunday night, when I went to bed, I texted Courtney that despite the fact that, well, basically I was pissed because, my Packers looked like shit and her Vikings looked good. But that pissed me off because I'd rather the Packers win than my team win, and I was winning. And then I opened up my phone on Monday morning, and the scores flipped. And it went from being – I actually had 104.4 points when I went to bed and woke up with 103.4, and she has 104.4. But I'm not really surprised because I think the adjustment came from I didn't get penalized for the Giants blocking my kicker's kick, but I think they actually did that, and I lost a point, and I think she got a point from her defense being fucking awesome on Sunday. I wasn't really expecting to win this game. My roster is constructed to kind of come on in a week or so, and Russell Wilson's still a little bit gimpy. Plus, for those of you that watch, I watch them now because I live out here, but the Rams play the Seahawks once a year like it's their goddamn Super Bowl. Sure, they'll go 7-9, but they'll fucking beat the shit out of the Seahawks at least once, and that's all that seems to matter to them. So, not too surprised there. Lamar Miller was hoping for more than that. Emmanuel Sanders, I thought would have a breakout game, did nothing. Melvin Gordon actually did a lot because, unfortunately for Courtney, Danny Woodhead is now out with a torn ACL. Sorry, Courtney, that sucks. But for her team, as I said last week in the preview, that it's always a little risky playing your defense against your starting quarterback. But, she would have beat the shit out of me had she probably started anybody else except for Winston, who threw 4 picks, including one of what was returned for a touchdown, and he gave up a fumble. So he really only got those 10.4 points because he threw a touchdown and for over 200 yards. Kelvin Benjamin had just an insane game. I think that'll continue throughout the year. She'll get more from Gurley. He looks like they're starting to get a feel for him. Other than that, I'm sure she was hoping for a little bit more, but a win's a win, and congratulations, Courtney.
All right. Good sportsmanship, Noel. That is the way to do it. And I was joking with Noel today because he has Josh Gordon on his bench. He's suspended, as you know, and Le'Veon Bell is suspended. We both drafted players we knew were not going to start at the beginning of the season. However, Josh Gordon today might be out again because he has an arrest warrant out for him for failing to show up for a paternity test. So that dude is about as fucked up as his old quarterback friend, Douche McAllister. What is his name?
Johnny Manziel.
Johnny Football. Thank you, Johnny Football.
Who TMZ actually tracked down on the campus of Texas A&M where he's going back to school and asked him about the Browns situation, or at quarterback, and he said he wished them all the best, but he doesn't see a chance in hell of them taking him back.
I wouldn't. I mean, he completely squandered an amazing opportunity. If you get picked to play in the NFL, first of all, that's like winning the lottery. The odds of that happening are so unbelievably low. But to be considered as elite as he was and as a great of a talent as he was, he really squandered that. So I don't have any love lost for Johnny Football. I sympathize with his affliction. I think he is an alcoholic, and he struggles with that. And I can appreciate that struggle that he has there. But everything else he's just a huge douchebag. Huge douchebag. So at any rate, let's wrap that up. Let's go on to the preview for next week. Let's start with my game and Brandon, which looking at it on the surface doesn't look too bad for me. And then you break it down and I'm going to die because Brandon has, well, it's Brandon, number one. So you might as well just chalk that up to a loss any given week. But I have two questionable players. He has two questionable players. And I'm just not confident this week. I have to start Allen Robinson, whose Brandon Marshall looks like he might be out this weekend. And I'm going to start Jamal Charles, even though I'm not entirely sure he's going to do very well because Spencer Ware they're probably not going to use him nearly as much as they did the first 2 weeks. Pair that with the fact that Des Bryant is really not that great. He's a 53rd of wide receivers overall so far this year. And the shining light on my team right now is Derek Carr, who's the number 4 quarterback. If he can keep plugging away, keep doing well, I might stand a chance. But I really like Brandon's team. I hate to say that this week, but I really do like his team. I think he's going to beat me. So he's got a 20-point line on me as well. So I guess I'll just start drinking now, and by next Wednesday night when we're doing our next podcast, I'll just be ready to cry and say congratulations, Brandon.
Not to pile on, but he's also facing a Cleveland team which has their defense. I'll look it up later, but they have an unbelievable amount of rookies that you've never heard of starting on defense, and they're down to starting Cody Kessler at quarterback this week, who most teams didn't think were going to get drafted at quarterback, and he's got a really weak arm. So the defense is going to be out there a lot. So I think that 25.7 might be a bit conservative as far as
oh, shit. All right. Well, there you go. Try to be as good a sportsman as I can. And so good luck to you, Brandon. May the best man win. May the man with the smaller penis win, Brandon.
Now you're certainly doomed because the gods will come after you.
No.
Forthwith.
All right. Okay, let's move on. Next game.
All right. So this game is projected to be quite close between old Ben and his Castle Black Night's Watch and Vanessa and her fabled human resources buffaloes, as I like to call them. This one, I'm not sure if Bortles kind of came back to earth last week or maybe they were just kind of off. I'm going to go with them just being a little off. And I do think he'll bounce back. And although they're listed as having right about the same, I don't want to say that Stafford is going to have a good game against my Packers, but I don't want to say it otherwise because then he will. Other than that, though, this is a game, or it's always a matchup of matchups, to forgive the horrible saying, but Ben is, Ezekiel Elliott is going against a depleted Chicago front that was already not that good to begin with. DeMarco Murray is going up against a Oakland defense that flat out sucks. Antonio Brown, that's where I'm not sure. Philadelphia has had the luxury of playing the Browns and then the Bears to start the season. So I don't know how their defense is actually, if their defense is any good or not, but I guess we'll find out. I actually, forgive me, Ben, but I actually like, apart from maybe Terrell Pryor and that two tight end starting thing, I like Vanessa in this game, even though it's a little close. But Brandon should win. But judging by the matchups, that's who I would go with. But I think it's going to be close either way. And I actually think it could be lower scoring than it's actually projected.
Interesting. Well, we'll find out. It's the beauty of football. We'll find any given Sunday. You never know. Let's move on to Summer Drew Brees versus America Doomgivers. This is Josh versus Kenfield. I'm going to call it for Josh right off the bat. Not only does he have a 40-point line, really the only negative on his team right now is Matt Forte is questionable, and he has been a stud this year. He's the number 2 running back. He's averaging 36 points a week. It's almost as good as the number 1 running back, D'Angelo Williams, which he also owns, scoring 41.5 points per week. I'm going to put the disclaimer that I do think that Josh will taper off as the year goes on simply because D'Angelo Williams will be replaced by Le'Veon Bell in a couple weeks. And then I believe that Drew Brees is off to a hell of a start, but I just don't think he's as good as he's actually playing. I think he's just getting a little bit long in the tooth. And I think that I think teams were like me. I don't think that they were expecting a lot out of Forte, so they weren't stacking the box to their own demise. Now that they're realizing that he can run all over them, they're going to start playing a little bit more defensively against Matt Forte, and that might slow him down a bit. He might still end up top 10, top 15, but I don't think he's top 5. I don't think he's number 2. So I'm going to call this for Josh. I think that he's going to have a great week. He faces a slew of very easy defenses. Drew Brees, Frank Gore, DeAndre Hopkins, Matt Forte. The Seahawks all face the 28th, 26th, 27th, 28th, and 24th worst in their best? Worst. What would that be? The 20th best. That's how that goes. Yay, brains. 28th, 26th, 27th, 28th, 24th best in their categories against those opponents. So that's really good for him. Drew Brees going against Atlanta. If 20th best defense, that means there's only, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 other, right? 29, 30, 31, 32. I'm so stupid. 4 other defenses worse than that. So I think that he's going to do just fine. Whereas the American Doom Givers, they have a somewhat easy week. They are facing a slew of mediocre defenses, and they do have a couple in the 20s. But the best one for them is their kicker, Chandler Catanzaro, who faces the 26th best defense against the kickers. So whatever that's worth. So sorry, Kenfield. I think this is going to Josh this week.
And if I could hop in on this one, I should have mentioned this earlier when it comes to Sammy Watkins, but supposedly part of the reason that, according to, I would say probably Bill's favored media sites, part of the reason Roman was let go was because he hasn't utilized Sammy Watkins. However, Sammy Watkins has a foot injury, and it's been diagnosed as something where basically the blood flow isn't getting to it very well, so it's not healing very fast. So if you watch him play, he's just not as explosive as you expect him to be. Like, especially if you watched him as senior at Clemson, he was insane. So, we'll see if the change at offensive coordinator, which is probably not going to be good considering that it's a longtime Rex Ryan assistant who's now running the offense, helps that out. But in theory, according to the Bills, that was a big reason that Roman was let go. So maybe Watkins will get the ball more, maybe not. Maybe he's just injured.
Okay, great. Good insights, Noel. I didn't know that. I didn't realize that was such a big deal with his foot. But that's really interesting. Let's go on to the next game. Take it away.
Sorry, I had to go back to a different page. All right, so correct me if I'm wrong since I had to reset this, but this is Tyler going against Molly this week, correct?
Yep.
All right. I guess I can see why this line is the way it is. Christian Michael, that 17 points might be. I think Seattle's going to have a tough time against San Francisco this week because, say what you will about Chip Kelly, but that defense, if you watch them, they fly around and they're going to be expecting they're not going to let the Seahawks run. They're going to try and get Russell Wilson and his gimpy leg to pass on him. So, even with Minnesota's tough defense, Cam Newton, as I said last week, he is Carolina's offense, and he's a beast. He can throw the ball, he can run it, he's going to get you touchdowns, run the ball. David Johnson, as you said, Mike, he's really kind of emerged as a Cardinals running back you want to have because, as you mentioned earlier, he catches balls out of the backfield. When they used to have more of that platoon system, it was because they had someone like Beanie Wells who was a bruising runner but really couldn't do anything catching it or sucked in pass protection. So David Johnson he does all 3 phases. He asks for running back really well. Mike Evans might have a tough week. As I said before, any Cleveland receiver at this point is probably going to have a bad time with Cody Kessler back there. So Gary Barnidge, who hasn't, I don't think, lived up projections at all this year. I think 9.1 is quite high, being his average 3.5. But other than that, even with what I said to start off, I do think this will be closer than the line goes. But this one could come down to 2 stout performances from both their defenses. That's what I'd look for in this game. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Solely based on Cam Newton, I'm going to go with Molly on this one.
I agree with you. And if I can interject something on Gary Barnidge real quick, looking at his player rank, he's 37th among tight ends. So that not only makes him not only viable in ESPN standard leagues, which are 10 teams, nor does it make him viable in the Mile High Champions League, which is 12 teams, or in the highest we've ever been, which is 14 teams. He's not even a viable NFL first string tight end. He's 37th overall. I mean, there's only 32 teams. So if he's right now playing at the second rate tight end position. So perhaps Gary Barnidge isn't the solution we were looking for. These aren't the droids you're looking for. So let's move on to the next one. We're going to look at Charlie's team versus Noel. Noel, I think you might be happy. I'm going to call a victory for you this week.
Hooray!
Yay! Not only do you have a solid line of 21.5 points, but I just think you're a little bit more stacked right now, considering that two of his biggest weapons, Julio Jones and Gronk, are still questionable. Gronk could go down as one of the greatest tight ends, if not the greatest tight end of all time, just because he's unmatched in physicality. He's like a door running at you with the weight of 270 pounds, I think he is. He's massive. He's a big guy, and he's impossible to cover. The only way to stop him is to get in front of the ball and hopefully swat it down, which Brady's not going to let you do. Garoppolo might, or whoever their third stringer is now. But the only other way to take him out is to go for the knees, go for the legs, and that makes him very injury prone. And so I'm still questionable this week. If he plays, I think this would be a much closer contest because the third string quarterback for the Patriots is going to probably use him as a safety valve, as all kind of rookie and unseasoned Jacoby Brissett, as the guy's name. He's a rookie from I don't know where, from Afghanistan. No, that's not it. University of Florida. So he's going to look to him if he plays as one of the big guys. He'll be like, well, at least if I put it in his vicinity, he can hopefully catch, because they don't really have a bunch of other weapons besides Edelman. So I'm going to say this is your week to lose, Noel. I think Wilson will snap back. I do think he's going to struggle against San Francisco's defense. However, being with the 12th man, I think that fucks up anybody who goes to Seattle. It just gets in their head. Lamar Miller, I think, should do just fine against the Patriots defense. I had them for the first 2 weeks, and they don't look nearly as good as I thought they would. They're quite porous, especially in the secondary, which may not help Lamar Miller as much, but if they start spreading the ball around, they might have to unstack the box and play a little bit more cover 2, cover 3 to try to help out the corners and the safeties. So I think you're going to win, Noel. I think it's not going to be a 21-point victory, barring any sort of a big game by Jeremy Hill or whomever. But I do think you are going to walk away with a win this week. I especially think that's true. Well, let me say one more thing, actually. The only way I think that this could really fly in my face is looking at the defensive matchups, because Charlie on the whole faces a whole lot easier defensive lineup than you do this week. Aaron Rodgers is going against the 31st best defense. So second worst, let's call it. Detroit's defense is really bad, really, really bad. And I don't think – well, they're really bad against the run as well, so they might end up running the ball a lot more with Eddie Lacy, so that may not be as good of a thing for Rodgers, but who knows? I just – the only thing that might help save Charlie and make it a closer game or make Charlie win is the fact that he's facing a lot easier defenses than you are on the whole this week. You face a couple top 10s. You face 4 top 10s. Jordan Matthews is taking on the 9th. Jeremy Hill facing the 9th. The Bengals facing the 9th. And then Nick Novak, the kicker, which is meaningless, faces the 5th best defenses. So you're facing tougher defenses, but I think you've got a better lineup. I still think you're going to win this week.
I'm going to jump in here, and just because I want to say it before it's too late, I look like a afterthought moron, but I all I heard about Sterling Shepard going the season was what an explosive athlete he was, and that was what I heard about Odell Beckham Jr. when I picked him up off the waiver wire when I had him when he was a rookie, and had that iconic catch, and I really think this week in particular, because after getting lampooned 2 weeks in a row for having their number one super expensive top paid I don't know if it's top paid, one of the top paid cornerbacks in the league, the Redskins have actually decided this week to have Josh Norman follow around Odell Beckham Jr., and that'll leave Sterling Shepard up against, Brashad Breeland, the guy that got burned actually we'll say torched by Antonio Brown on Monday night 2 weeks ago. So, I think that he could have a huge game. And if he doesn't, I still think going forward, that may have been a steal of a draft pick there for Charlie.
There you go. That's perfect. That you know what? I wish corporate America would go away from Monday morning quarterback and call themselves, what was it? What did you just say? Like, look back moron or something?
Oh, afterthought, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, afterthought moron. That's so much better than Monday morning quarterback. That's just like, well, I'm an idiot, so hooray. Cool. Well, that's that game. Let's move on to the final game, the Legend of Lincoln versus the Rams.
All right. Sorry, I had to go back again. So
I know there's a lot of porn on the internet, Noel, but you could probably, you know what? You can look at it while we do the podcast. Just,
who says I'm not?
Hey-o.
So I see that, after actually, who the hell was Larson starting at quarterback? I should know. I already played him.
Which week?
The past 2 weeks.
I will look it up for you. One second, please.
Because I see now that
Kirk Cousins.
You like that? That's I should have known that. For as much shit as he gets, it probably deserves. Actually, to be fair, as annoying as he is, he plays for the worst owner, the most douchebag owner, the one who I don't know if you've ever heard about with Dan Snyder, but he basically owns all of the sports media around the DC area, and he hired one of the biggest radio hosts, detractors of the douchebags team, and then so he hired him, and then immediately canceled his show. So he hired him this contract and basically shelved him just so he could get the guy to shut up. But I think, although the team will suck, Cousins might actually have a good fantasy season, but I can't blame Larson for picking up, right now the second-rate quarterback in fantasy. And the only thing he should have a decent week this week because, my God, does New Orleans defense suck. But going forward, it might be rough, as you and I have discussed before. That being said, Jameis Winston, we'll see if he bounces back or if he struggles again against another good defense. I like Todd Gurley bouncing back, and I think this is his coming out party because Tampa Bay's defense is just god awful. This is the 7.3 line on this one. Maybe I'm just cynical because all of my games are close, but I think this one's going to be a very close game as well. You look, it's a good matchup at kicker. Both kickers are projected to get less than they've averaged so far this year. Cardinals defense going up against a Buffalo team that doesn't want to score a lot of points. They just don't want to have the other team score a lot of points. So that should bode well for Courtney. And Tevin Coleman, we'll see if he can steal some of Devontae Freeman's magic again. But, I like Courtney in this game, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that Coby Fleener just hasn't done anything this season. You keep thinking he's going to do something, and then he has yet to break out. He still very well might, but when you're averaging 2.5 points per week, and I'm sure we could look this up, but he's probably one of the higher paid tight ends in the NFL right now. And, Mike, you were saying that he should maybe fill the role that Jimmy Graham did, but he doesn't seem to have any rapport with Drew Brees right now. That could always change, but it just hasn't looked good. But Willie Snead, on the other hand, could be a difference maker, but I think the big injuries, as you alluded to earlier, for Larson with running backs could cost him this week.
Indeed. All right. Well, thanks for doing that, Nolan. We're going to move on to the last two parts. This week I'm going to talk about the weekly poll that we have up on the main page on ESPN, and then we're going to go to Huddle Up. And ironically, the poll about this week is about Huddle Up. And the question is, what topic would you like to see covered in future episodes of Huddle Up? And the options are offensive concepts, defensive concepts, special teams concepts, or football fundamentals. And today we're going to focus on one of the football fundamentals, which is the route tree, which is the way that a wide receiver or a tight end or any receiver, even a running back, can go out and catch a pass. And you've seen them run 1,000 times when you watch football. But now you're going to be able to say, okay, I just watched Jordy Nelson run a post in and Aaron Rodgers hit him for an 80-yard touchdown. In fact, there was a lot of times I was watching last week when Jordy Nelson would do a corner on the right side. After listening to this podcast with Huddle Up, you're going to be able to know exactly what we're talking about. So, Noel, what is a route tree?
So a route tree is basically just it's a visualization of the 9 fundamental routes that any receiver, as you said, can run out of any position. And, a lot of these have evolved, but if you've ever played Little League football, there's just some basic ones that you probably always run. Even playing Little League football for me, you had, typically you'd go, coach would say, hey, run an out route, run a dig route, run a flag route, run a post route. And those ones are all where you would run 10 yards or 10 to 15 steps and immediately make a cut. So, I'm trying to make this not super complicated, but they're all about finding different ways to get open to, whether it's in space, whether it's running deep or, running short. So let's start with, we'll just go numerically. The first one is going to be the flat route. And this one, I think us all being Broncos fans, you would have noticed a lot of this with Wes Welker, where he's going to run, just a few yards up the field and immediately break towards the sideline. This gets run by a lot of slot receivers, which means they're lined up in between the outside wide receiver and either the tight end or an offensive lineman. And slot receivers, they generally operate in space, and what they're supposed to do is kind of pull the defensive backs up. And that's also what you'll see also when I talk about with the route tree, is a big part of that is what the defensive backs do in response to each route. So the flat route is super common. Running backs run it a lot as well. Second one is the slant, which, back to Wes Welker, you'll see him run in the opposite direction, where the slant can be anything from 5 yards out to just 1 yard out, and they'll kind of break a diagonal route across the field. And the idea is it's a quick hitter where sometimes you'll have it with big receivers where they'll have, if someone's playing right up on them, they use their body to basically box out, which is a basketball term, forgive me, and, use their body to separate the defender from the ball coming at them. Then the comeback route, which this is one where I'm trying to think, he doesn't do it so much anymore, but back in his heyday, this was something that Larry Fitzgerald and Kurt Warner just scored big on, where you'll see the receiver kind of streak down the sideline, and once they get right towards the sticks or the first down marker, they'll break back towards the sideline, and they want the ball usually up so they can go up and get it. And once again, it's using their body to put in position between the ball and the receiver or the defensive back. Then conversely, you'll have a curl route, and this one is typically run, I would say, more out of the slot or from tight ends, where it's the same concept as far as running up the field, but you'll break back, and this time inside towards the numbers. And you'll see that a lot more from, I'd say, tight ends. Not so much, our old friend Julius Thomas, who tends to run more vertical routes, but maybe, actually, this is one you'll see an old nemesis, Antonio Gates, run a fair amount of. And again, it's, you're trying to get the defensive back moving one way, and you come back going the other way and create a little space to get the ball. Then, and Mike, forgive me if I'm going too fast. I know there's a lot of moving parts of this.
No, you're fine. Actually, I wanted to say to our fans out there in fantasy land, don't feel like you have to take notes here. If you go to the main page of the fantasy um, thing on ESPN, there's a chart of the route tree that shows everything that Noel is talking about. It has all the different explanations and visualizations, so you can see, oh, that's a post. That's the curl Noel's talking about. That's the comeback with Larry Fitzgerald. I get it. You don't have to take notes. There's a great graphic on the homepage there, and that's it. Go ahead, Noel.
Okay. I already alluded to the out and the dig, which those are the two most fundamental routes you'll see run. I mean, it's so basic. The idea is that you're running, get defensive back moving backwards, and you cut either inside for the dig or outside for the out. And typically the ball is should be thrown immediately as soon as the receiver makes the break. That's why if you listen to the podcast from the season preview I was talking about with Jameis Winston and being a guy who anticipates throws. That is, I would say those routes are some of the hardest ones to anticipate, and because the receiver has not turned his head back yet. So it's a trust thing between quarterback and receiver, but there's a reason it's such a good fundamental thing to do. It's because if the ball's there, it's a good way to get a first down, or if you're going across the middle, assuming that you don't have safeties right there, it's a good way to catch the ball and even progress from there. And then these last three, we'll start with the corner, which you talked about, Jordy Nelson. The corner route is, we talked about this last week with the cover 2 defense. The corner route was really developed to find a way to break up some kind of vulnerabilities within the cover 2. And the corner route really does that. The receiver will go usually about, I'd say, 7-8 yards deep and kind of cut towards the sideline. And the idea is they're right in between where the cornerback is, where the safety's going to be covering deep. And so it hits that vulnerability each time. However, that is one of the hardest throws for a quarterback to make because it combines both arm strength and touch, because you have to get air into the ball. But too much, it gets intercepted. There's a great video of, and I'm not trying to be mean here, there's a great video of Teddy Bridgewater last season trying to throw a corner route, and you can see he can't get enough velocity on it, ends up floating it, and he throws an interception on the sideline. But the corner route has really become a staple of a lot of offenses right now because it utilizes the sideline, which, is a great way to, especially if you're coming from behind, is a great way to get big passing yards and get out of bounds to stop the clock. And it puts a lot of stress on, I would say, zone, which is very predominantly run in the NFL. Some teams run straight man, but that's very hard. So the corner route is, it puts a lot of pressure on the safety and the corner. So that stuff underneath, as we talked about with the, the flat, the slant, the curl, the comeback, those really come into play with other receivers as you're in the corner. The post is, I would say, yet again, another fundamental one, but this one is primarily used, we talked about this last week again, against teams that have basically one deep safety. Because if you have two deep, you're pretty much cooked. But the post puts pressure on that one deep safety and opens up everything underneath. I have this thing in front of me right now which talks about really one of those prolific NFL players currently playing as far as post routes goes is AJ Green. And it really is because the post, you're generally not going to throw it short, but a good route runner can kind of know how to manipulate a safety as well as a good quarterback. And if you've got that one deep safety and he bites, the post will burn you each time. And then finally, this is the one that everyone loves because it's the most simple route to run, the fade, or you've heard it called a 9 route, where you just run straight up the field. And this is something where if you're like me and slow as hell, this will never work. But if you're, say, Deshaun Jackson or Randy Johnson, not Randy.
I want to see Randy Johnson run a go route. I want to see that very bad. Holy hell, I'm so slow.
Or let's say Randy Moss.
There you go.
And you just blow right past the guy. And the idea is, in this case, you need to have speed and a quarterback that can make the throw. But this is what you always talk about. You always hear NFL gamecasters going, well, they really have to stretch the defense or take the top off of it. And what they're saying is they have to have someone run a 9 route. What's perplexing is there's been a new phenomena in the NFL where teams will run fade routes in the end zone. And usually that's just kind of running a guy towards the corner of the end zone and having someone throw the ball up. But that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But, I guess another new thing with the fade route is you hear them talk about this on TV is they'll say, this is who's anticipating a back shoulder throw. And this is another Jordy Nelson thing where the receiver will run a fade, and to try and utilize how much cushion the defensive back is going to get or give, the quarterback will kind of throw a little bit short and towards the back shoulder of the wide receiver and towards the sideline. And this isn't going to go for a huge gain, but with a good quarterback, it's going to get you usually a first down.
Sweet. So with these different schemes, I would say that certain teams have a propensity to do certain things. Like you're not going to see Alex Smith throw a long bomb to Jerry Maclin. You might see him throw 20 yards, 30 yards maybe, but you're not going to see the example of a go or a fade route, which Joe Flacco destroyed our Broncos with Torrey Smith, where he just bombed it over Raheem the Dream's head and went 60-plus yards for a touchdown and knocked us out of the playoffs. Which teams are more likely to use more of the dink and dunk style of throwing, where they just kind of hit and they want to dissect the field? They're called game managers. They don't really throw long. But which teams go long? Which teams are going to use the posts, the goes, and the corners? And then, again, the dink and dunks. Which ones are going to use the curls, the comebacks, and the ins and the outs?
So, as you already said, the Chiefs are going to use a lot of dink and dunk. Surprisingly enough, our Broncos right now under Kubiak are going to do a lot of the same thing. I'm trying to think another one. Look, you can kind of look at this is a fun thing to watch is, who has coached where and came from what system. So in Philadelphia right now, they've got one of Andy Reid's understudies, so they're going to do a lot of that same thing. Then as far as the deep teams go, there's been a movement away from this. I was reading a stat to start the year where the average yardage per completion is actually dropping over the past couple of seasons. Teams are focused on just getting the ball out faster. But there are still teams out there like the Packers. They try and utilize what we call more of a vertical offense to get the ball deep and kind of utilize the seams. As you said, the Ravens do that. Not so much with Trestman as their offensive coordinator at the moment, but they still do that. And then, really, most teams anymore, and this is just how the NFL works, and they always talk about it, it's parity, but it's a lot of hybrids. And I think one of the best examples of this is if you watch the Texans, which will be on tomorrow night, and the Patriots for that matter, because they have very similar offenses. They do a lot of what you call underneath stuff, where they want to get they want the quarterback to have easy reads. So they want to see what defensive backs or what linebackers are doing what. And the easiest way to see that is oftentimes with short stuff. However, both teams, especially when Brady's back, have quarterbacks that can throw it deep. So they'll incorporate a route from one receiver that'll stretch the defense out and kind of force them to do a bunch of other stuff. And this is kind of what we're seeing right now is most teams are what we call kind of hybrids. We don't really see the Chiefs are probably the only one I can think of that are almost truly West Coast and everything's short and out of possession. Most teams anymore are going to run these hybrid offenses where they utilize stuff from the West Coast, they utilize deep routes, they utilize all this other running game, play action, just because they want – because everything – I don't know how much time these guys probably spend a week on this, 60 hours, but they want to find as many different ways to manipulate the defense as possible.
All right, there you go. Noel, is there anything else you wanted to add on the route tree, on the previews, on the reviews, on any shithead of the week additions to Sexy Rexy? Anything else you wanted to go over tonight?
Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention this for Sexy Rexy. He was complaining about the offense being anemic and the defense having to be on the field too much. But Sexy Rexy, his team was penalized 143 times last year. And while they're in the middle of the pack this year, I looked it up. I watched most of that game on Thursday, and the defense would get the offense off their opposing offense off the field, but give up a bonehead penalty. The offense would get a first down, but get called for holding. And sometimes you could say, oh, that just happens once or twice, but this just happens to Rex over and over and over because he's an undisciplined idiot. And when you do that, oh yeah, I have an example too of this. When I was playing Little League, we had a player on our team that was known to be, and I was in 5th grade at this point, who was known to be a dirty player. In practice, he'd kick you, he'd step on you, he'd pull on your face mask, he'd try and go at your eyes and bottom tackles. And after one game, which we lost because he gave up a first down after, I believe it was his 3rd unsportsmanlike penalty where he hit someone after the play was over, we were all kind of sulking in our very high-pitched voices, much like Kirk Cousins.
We don't like that.
And the coach comes over and puts his arm around the kid and tells him, basically we're all wrong and we shouldn't be yelling at him because he will never be mad at that kid because he plays with passion. And he will never get mad at any of us for playing with passion. So, you shouldn't be mad at him, you should be mad at yourselves. The following week, this kid in practice, after the whistle is over, puts a wallop on one of our teammates who just happens to be our head coach's son, and on this play hyperextended his leg and broke his femur.
Oh, ow.
And this is kind of what I think about when I think of Rex Ryan, is you have to be, you can't play out of control, you can't coach out of control, and that's part of the problem with defense is, I don't know if you remember seeing this at all, Mike, but when Singletary was coaching the 49ers, he would just scream at all of his players, and defensively that's okay because it's kind of a game of emotion, it's a game of reaction, but offense is a bit more cerebral, and those guys are just going, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? So Rex just yelling at his players and rah, 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 talking about how awesome they are, that may motivate some of them, but it also motivates them, some of the guys in the wrong way. For example, the player that he had for the Jets that he signed from the Jets after the Jets cut him for punching Geno Smith in the face for owing him money.
Awesome. Real winner there.
Indeed. Just like all the Ryans.
They're such a family of douchebags. We could spend a whole podcast about how.
We sure? That's why I was like, he'll come back. He'll be a shithead of the week again. I know it.
He or his brother, or his great aunt Mildred Ryan. She's a real bitch. Anyways, off topic. Let's get back here. So that's it. Actually, that's the whole podcast. Thank you for staying with us this whole time. Noel, thank you again. You're so awesome to do this with me every Wednesday. I really appreciate it. And we are going to sign off. As you all know, we are doing this every week. Expect it to be launched on Thursday night, so it'll be available for you late Thursday, early Friday morning. And we're going to be doing this through the end of the season, through the end of the Colorado Bowl. So, Noel, is there anything else you want to add for tonight?
Not really. Just I apologize to you listeners that I am loopy. I had a lot to do with TPS reports this week. Won't get into too much, but I swear I'll try and be better, but it'll probably be worse next week.
Are they seriously called TPS reports, or is that you just giving me shit because that's what they had it on Office Space?
Oh, we just got audited this week. That was it.
Oh, I got you. All right. Did you turn in all your TPS reports?
I did, but my sister branch didn't, and now I have to go help them out, so I'm mad.
Goddamn sister branch. Always, they're like the Rex Ryans of whatever company you work for. Fastenal, right?
That's right. Industrial supply.
All right. There you go. Anyways, everyone, thank you again. Hope you have a great week. Good luck this week, and we will catch you on the flip side. Take care, everyone. Good night.